Welcome to another edition of the Voice of Palestine, Voice of the Palestinian People. It's October 6, 2013, and I'm your co-host, Hanna Qawas. This week we'll be talking with Kevin Neish, the Victoria-based human rights activist who just returned from an extended stay in Gaza. Kevin, who is also a Mavi Marmara survivor, will update us on the dire situation in Gaza, as well as the impact of the increased Rafah border closure by the Egyptian military junta. Good afternoon, Kevin, and welcome to the Voice of Palestine.
Well, it's good to be back on your program, Hannah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You know, since we talked to you while you were in Gaza, the situation is really getting worse. Could you tell us a bit about, how people are coping, how they're surviving, basically, with not much food coming through the border crossings and not much even medicine? I hear they are short on many medicines.
Yeah, well, all your listeners know that the Egyptians have destroyed pretty much all the tunnels that were used to supplement the what could get into Gaza through the border crossing. So, no, the huge gasoline for all the cars when I left, they're beyond for blocks and blocks. And the gasoline that they do get now is coming from Israel. So that's and the Israelis are charging twice the price of what they used to get through Egypt. So that impacts everything. The cost of delivery, cost of generating electricity, cost of driving around, taxis, everything has gone up, and the food was starting to disappear from the grocery store shelves, and the prices were going up as well. So. But most important, besides the food and the hospitals aren't getting their allotment of diesel for their generators. So when I left Gaza, I was getting 4 hours of power a day. Not every day, but most days would be only 4 hours of power a day. So how can anybody function with only 4 hours of electricity a day? It can't happen. And then the hospitals have to supplement that with their diesel generators, and it seems they don't have enough diesel to cover that. So they really are in dire straits. And the Egyptians, usually in such a circumstance, the Egyptians before when the Morsi government was in, even when Mubarak was in, they would allow patients across the border into Egypt for important medical treatment. Now that's pretty much blocked off. When I was there, they allowed one bus through on the 18th, I believe, medical cases, which would be about 40 people on the bus. But that's certainly not going to fill the bill. There's many hundreds of people that need to get out for medical treatment, and they're not getting out. So this is it. It's a frightful situation. And it all stems again back to the Israeli, supposedly the Israeli negotiated ceasefire in November 2012. That was supposed to do many things. Supposed to ease the crossings. It was supposed to extend the fishing limit to 6 miles. It was supposed to allow farmers to farm within 100 meters of the border. But now basically that's a one-way ceasefire now. The Hamas is still desperately trying to adhere to it, and I saw it with my own eyes. They're trying to follow that ceasefire, but these Israelis are ignoring it entirely. They were shooting at farmers from 800 meters from the border at one family there, and the regular point now is 500 meters from the border. We're right back to square one before the ceasefire in November. The fishing zone is back to 3, usually sometimes 6, but 3 miles usually, and the Israelis are even doing military maneuvers within the Palestinian waters right offshore. I watched an Israeli gunboat cruise by Gaza City, not more than half a kilometer from shore. It was as if they're goading the Palestinians to retaliate, and Hamas won't do it because they want the ceasefire to hold. But I'm starting to ramble. You should ask me some questions to keep me on topic.
No, that's basically what we want to hear, really, Kevin, because we want to talk about the situation there and how they are coping. And obviously, the Israelis are not allowing, people even to plant their fields, as you're saying. They shooting at people who try to go to their land to till it, really, or to to plant.
And we went to a meeting of 40 farmers near Khan Yunis, and there's only a handful of internationalists with ISM in Gaza who went hoping to act as at least human observers, if not shields, but observers, and we'd go with them into the fields. They're not even trying to go into their fields because it's so dangerous. And the trouble is, even if they get into their fields and plant, the Israelis are coming across with bulldozers and plowing everything up. So and they haven't got the diesel water for the irrigation. So basically, farmers, we're going back a couple of generations now. The Palestinian farmers in Gaza, they're waiting for the winter rains to arrive so that they can have natural irrigation and not have to tend their fields with artificial irrigation, and so that they won't have to endanger themselves going into their fields to tend to them. So we're going back a generation or more as far as how Palestinians manage their crops. We're going back to counting on Mother Nature, and it's a terrible situation because that's going to move. They're going to wait till November, December.
Yeah.
For the winter rains to come. Well, that's taking. They're supposed to be planting in August, and I was all ready to go middle of August with them, and they wouldn't go because it was just so dangerous. So they've lost August, September, October. They've lost at least 3 months of valuable crop time to produce food for. And so what's the alternative? Well, buying food from the Israelis from their border, and it's a trap.
So, it's clearly what the Israelis are doing is collective punishment, which is against all international laws. And, what the Israelis trying to achieve? Are they trying to starve people to death in Gaza, or they want to force them also to buy from Israel at high cost? What do you think the reasoning behind this collective punishment?
Yeah, they're not going to starve them to death. The Israelis know exactly what they're doing. I'm sure you've heard the comment from I think it was the foreign minister. He said the Palestinians are going on a diet. He said, and they're going to calculate what they need. And now they can be very exact about it because the tunnels are gone. So everything's going to be coming through Israel. And so I think what they're doing is collective punishment just because they can. And it's to send a message. It's a warning to every other country that whether it's Jordan or Iraq or Syria or Lebanon, Egypt. It's a warning to show everybody else what they're willing to do and how far the Israelis will. They'll squeeze them hard and make an example of them. That's. It almost, like I say, when that ship, the gunboat, cruised along Gaza City, anybody with a rifle could have shot at it. It was so it was such a provocation that I'm sure the Israelis, now that the tunnels are closed and they know what's coming into the area, I'm sure they want another war. They want to egg the Hamas on. Squeeze them hard enough that just out of frustration they'll fire rockets off and then it'll just be open season and I'm sure again some of your listeners don't that Israel uses the Gaza as a great big testing ground for new weapons. So whenever there's a new weapon fired out, a drone or a missile or a nerve gas of some sort, they'll Gaza is just a big testing ground for them. So if they can poke Gazans hard enough with a stick and get them to respond, then they've got the weaponry to test out on the people of Palestine, unfortunately. But anyways, I'm rambling again.
That's really interesting what you're saying, because also you said they're trying to show who's the boss in the region and who's the master in the region, which fits in the Zionist ideology, the superior master race, and that's the way their mentality works, that we are the master race and you're supposed to submit to everything we say. And they're trying, like you said, they're trying to finish what they started in last year. Was it November? When they attacked Gaza again, and then Morsi was in power and he negotiated some sort of ceasefire, which Israel didn't abide with, and which the Morsi government didn't really call them to account. But that was before. At least the situation was a little bit better, but which was really the military wasn't happy with it, were they? Because they have obligations towards Israel and towards the U.S., and that's why now once they took over, they actually, it's not taking over. It's a wrong term to say took over, because they always been in power in Egypt. The military.
Yeah, I think since '52.
Yeah. So I think they could squeeze the Palestinians now out of existence, really. And like you said, they're not allowing even sick people to pass through the Rafah crossing. It's really disturbing, because the world public reaction to what Israel is doing is really mute. You don't see anything happening in the North American media or with the governments either, because they don't hide. They support Israel, right or wrong. So what can people do? And now you said the borders are closed, and it's easier to go out, and it's impossible to go in Gaza. So like what we seen with Tarek and John when they were arrested in Cairo, and they stayed for 6-7 weeks in Egyptian jails. But and I don't know, could you tell us a bit about what ISM doing in Gaza, and is there anybody left in the ISM office there?
Yeah, there's the ISM officially in Gaza folded up, closed up their shop, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago or more. But there's a handful of activists there, and while I was there, we started getting ourselves registered and officially recognized, such that we can start and start bringing people in, but again with the border sealed up, it's as you say, it was a one-way valve. The Egyptians were letting internationalists leave, but they weren't letting them come back in, and that's why I stayed longer. I should have gone out in July 20th, I guess, but it was a one-way route. Nobody could replace me, so I decided to stay until they could get people in. So actually, an activist from the Gaza Art Program, he got in just after I left, so he's replaced me, but not that I was working on the Gaza Art. But so some people are able. It's very, very difficult, and and one quick point, just talking about the Egyptians putting the squeeze on, they were actually shooting at Palestinian fishermen along the southern border. It was, it seems hard to believe, fellow Arabs, but the Palestinian fishermen used to be able to have a bit more lead.
Yeah, we were talking really about the fishermen in Gaza and how the Egyptians are tightening the noose on them, and how they're not allowing even fishermen to fish in their water, basically. So could you please follow on your thoughts, Kevin? And this has a really immense effect on the not just the economic situation in Gaza, but also the moral of the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Yeah, well, that's the key. You hit it there. Was the moral aspect of it, having the Egyptian Navy shoot at Palestinian fishermen. I mean, it boggles the mind to understand why they would do this. But they out there, they attacked two ships. They shot at them, and the Palestinians were in Palestinian waters even. But they still came up. They shot at them, drive them away from the Egyptian border. They captured one boat and stole the engine off the boat. I mean, we're getting down to basic thievery here now, let alone kidnapping. And they, as you say, I understand they kidnapped two fishermen, took them away, and arrested them. So it's this is the Egyptian coup generals are working hand in hand with the Israelis now. It's
And I believe they charge them even for violating Egyptian.
Oh, well, I don't know.
It's really terrible.
Hard to believe I mean, Hamas is trying so hard to keep this going with Israel that they passed a law in Gaza that if any fisherman crosses 6-mile limit, like that's the negotiated peace agreement.
Yeah.
6-mile limit from November 12th.
Yeah.
That if a Palestinian fisherman crosses that line, not only are they at risk of being attacked by the Israelis, they'll be arrested by the Hamas government for crossing the line. So the Hamas government is enforcing this law.
Yeah.
Enforce this law as well to keep this ceasefire. But the Israelis and now the Egyptians, it's a horrendous situation that they're. I'm not sure what they're going to do. The last border that's open to them is the ocean. And I'm not sure if there's anybody going to try and bring a ship in. I know the Gaza Arc is a ways away from being seaworthy, but
from leaving.
It's a horrendous situation.
Yeah, and it's worth noting also that the Oslo Accord, which was signed 20 years ago on September 13th, allowed the fishermen in Gaza to go to 20 miles, which is again a violation of signed treaties, really.
Well, yeah, the Oslo said a lot of things. The White River Agreement said things. Camp David said things. It's all a matter of. It goes back to the law of the jungle, just like the assault on the Mavi Marmara.
Yeah.
I mean, Israel did it because they could get away with it. They have the power, they have the backing of the United States, and they'll do whatever they want to do. Like I say, it's like the law of the jungle. Unless somebody stops them with force, then they'll simply go ahead. I mean, the reason the November 2012 ceasefire happened in the first place was because Hamas was dropping rockets into Tel Aviv and Jerusalem.
Yeah.
That's the reason for the ceasefire. It wasn't because the Israelis suddenly got a warm spot in their heart for the Palestinians. They cut a deal in a hurry because they wanted those rockets to stop falling in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's a sad situation. That's what it takes.
Yeah.
I'm not condoning rockets, but it's simply a statement of fact as to what happened and what stopped the Israelis from invading Gaza in November 2012.
Yeah.
Anyways, go on.
No, they really, like you said, they only understand the language of force and power. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the Mavi Marmara. There was a parallel just a couple of days ago or a week ago in Russia, where the Greenpeace activists tried to protest against the drilling Russian water, really. And, they were arrested. Nobody was killed compared to the Mavi Marmara. And I'm not really saying the Greenpeace are wrong to protest. I'm not saying that, but I'm trying to compare between the two incidents and how the Western reaction to what happened in Russia compared to the Mavi Marmara. The least you could say of it is hypocritical because, including Canada, it made the headline news, why the Mavi Marmara hardly made the news. And you experienced it when you tried to talk CBC here. They didn't want you to talk. So, isn't that disturbing, really, the double standards and the hypocrisy of the media and the governments in the West?
Oh, it's it's frustrating, but as my father would say, what do you expect? These people are working for the CBC is working for the state. They knew who their boss is. Yeah. They know what the boss wants, and they act accordingly. So, as you mentioned, when I got back from the Mavi Marmara, I got one press conference when I came back, and then the CBC phoned me up and told me that my story was old news. And so within 2 days, the whole Mavi Marmara is technically old news to the CBC, and they didn't want to have me on their programs. But no, the double standard is frightening. I'm sure it
is frustrating.
These piracy charges and whatnot. And like you were saying, that happened in Russian waters, and here the Israelis pull it off in international waters and kill people. So, but the international court case is proceeding. I don't know if you know this, but the Comoros Islands have signed over the prosecuting powers to the Turkish authorities. Because the Comoros Islands, that was the flag that the Mavi Marmara was sailing under. So now the Turkish authorities are taking the Israeli authorities to the International Criminal Court. So it's I just filled out the documents actually just a couple of weeks ago to tell them my story. So
I hope they don't drop it under pressure from Washington. I don't have much faith in the Turkish government either.
Yeah, I'm quite amazed that the little Comoros Islands would have the backbone to do this.
Yeah, good.
On them, they're protecting international law. So
actually, we didn't hear about it. It's good you talked about it here on the Voice of Palestine, because we never hear that it's continuing, which is good sign really, because the war criminals need to be prosecuted really. Okay.
So they.
So you know any dates or deadlines for this court?
Oh, pardon me.
Do you know any day, when it's going to be heard at the international court, or?
I'm sure it's going to take quite a while. I'm willing to bet there'll be. Certainly, if the Israelis have anything to do with it, they'll be slowing down the process every step of the way. But they are filing the papers, and as I said, I got an email actually while I was in Gaza. I got an email asking me to make a statement as to what crimes I witnessed on the Mavi Marmara, and then send it back to them on the official International Criminal Court stationery. So.
Good.
So somebody, the Turkish authorities are proceeding with it.
So they're following up, which is a good sign, really. That's good. And we hope,
somebody has to.
We hope no outside pressure will stop them. Kevin, we talked a bit about the situation in Gaza. You stayed there, 4 months almost, or?
3. Well, I was there for 1 month in February, then I went back in June and stayed 3.5 months.
3.5 months. So the last time was 3.5 months. So when you arrived, it was really not as bad as when you left. Am I correct with the living conditions and standards?
No, Well, when I arrived, there was power for 18 hours, 12 hours, at least 12, and often 18 hours or more a day. There was no shortage of gasoline. Lots of food on the shelves. The hospitals were functioning. They were able to get. We went in and visited the hospital, and they said there are shortages, but they're managing. Whereas when I left, the electricity was going to be on for 4 hours a day. The emergency generators for the hospitals were going to be short of fuel. There was lineups, and food was disappearing off the shelves. And as I say, medical cases couldn't get across the border into Egypt. I think there's several hundred scholarship students all waiting to leave Gaza to take their scholarships, and they can't get out. The Egyptians won't let them out. So it's a real horrendous.
Yeah, really the only thing that changed since you arrived was the coup, or the junta taking over the government basically in Egypt, retaking the government, because they never really were out of the government.
No, they were controlling it, and the Israelis responded immediately. The Israelis actually the November 2012. I
can't hear you, Kevin. The Israelis were, So
the Israelis were honoring the ceasefire agreement from 2012 in November, right up until the Morsi government fell. Once the Morsi government fell, the ceasefire agreement was out the window, and they ignored it. So this Egyptian coup, or as you say, the reaffirmation of the who's running the show there, has had really serious effects in Gaza. It's tightened the screws terribly.
Yeah, so it really reminds me of what's happening with the juntas in South America. Similar behavior and the similar, human rights violation, and there is no concern for human life or dignity. That's what's happening in Egypt now. You've been to Latin America. Am I correct in comparing these two situations?
Oh yeah, it's similar. I mean, it's similar because a lot of the Latin American governments or dictators have been getting funding and technical and military support from Israel. The Argentinian generals, from back in the 80s, the Somoza from Nicaragua back in the 80s. Right now, Colombia is getting lots of weapons and support and technical training from Israel. So it's no surprise that you're seeing the same kind of violations of human rights in Latin America as you're seeing in Israel. It's the same teachers.
Which
sadly.
Is actually the same training, because they both trained like the Egyptian generals, and the South American generals were trained in the same schools, the schools of the Americas, which we call them the school of the assassins, really. And that's what's happening really there. But I'd like just to follow up on when you left Egypt, because you had some description on your blog, and it's really disturbing, the increased hatred towards Palestinians. Could you tell us a bit about what you saw when you left Gaza Well, first off, just getting the Egyptians would only let one bus out at a time, and and treated people very poorly, humiliating. It was just there's no point to it other than humiliation in the customs hall. They'd herd people around like cattle, and they'd fling their passports at them, toss them at them over people's heads. It was insulting. And then what happened was myself and the Italian activists were leaving Gaza, and we had a taxi waiting for us to take us to Cairo on the other side of the border in Rafah, Egypt. And a young Palestinian woman who had met me before, a student,
she came up to me in the customs hall and asked if she could join us, because she was alone, and it was, I would say she was fearful. She looked very concerned, and I'd say scared, and so we had her join us in our private taxi, and what that did was it made life a lot harder for us. I mean, I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But every time, and we were stopped and had to hand over our passports, I don't know, about 7 times, I guess. And then we were slowed down and had people stick their heads in the windows numerous times with their machine guns. But because there was a Palestinian in our vehicle, every single time that we were stopped and checked, she would have to get out and dump her bag out. Now, we didn't have to get out of the vehicle, but Palestinian. And the soldiers, the Egyptian soldiers, would blatantly make sexual come-ons to her. Horrendously insulting, but they're doing it right in front of me and the Italian. He's leaning in the window and just like a sexual assault, basically, verbally, leaning in the window. And there's nothing anybody can do because they've got a machine gun and they're controlling the checkpoint. So, but happily, she got her bag dumped times, and but happily we did get successfully to Cairo, and she immediately, I think the next morning, she flew out of Cairo, and now she's in Sheffield.
Yeah.
Her name's Malaka Mohammed, and happily I was quite worried about her, whether she would get out of Egypt if she did.
Yeah.
But no, it seems like to be a Palestinian in Egypt is against the law now. It's
Yeah.
I had friends that were flying into Egypt. They had visas issued by the Egyptian government. Everything was in order. The second they landed in the plane, they were simply turned around and sent back to Malaysia at their own expense. It didn't matter what paperwork or authority or visas or anything they had. If they were Palestinian, they simply didn't want them in the country and sent them away. It was
so he was going to Gaza, basically?
Oh, yeah, he was going to Gaza. He had been to a conference in New Zealand, and he was coming through Malaysia, and when the plane landed, as I say, he had his visa by the Egyptian government, but by the Morsi government, and he had everything in order. He was expected just to get out, and head to Gaza, but they put him in detention and let him rot in detention. And then they finally said, well, if you want to get out of jail, if you want your passport back, then you get your visa card out and you buy your own ticket and you fly yourself back to Malaysia.
Yeah.
And that's what he had to do. Otherwise, he'd be stuck in prison. So he flew back.
Yeah.
He came back on a second try. And when he came back the second time, he was fortunate that there was a prison bus leaving. They threw him directly out of the prison bus, and then the prison bus took him right to the Rafah border crossing, and then they shooed them all across the border into Gaza, like I say, like herding cattle. It's the meaning.
Yeah, I hope, our Palestinian brothers and sisters are listening, and our Egyptian brothers and sisters are listening, because this is not the tradition that between this and the solidarity that really marked the history of Palestinian Egyptian solidarity since Nasser, since 52. It's really a turnaround of what's happened, because the solidarity was at peak, and only during these military puppets, really, U.S. puppets, that they're trying to discriminate and humiliate the Palestinian people. You said, something attracted my attention. You said you've been stopped in the taxi 7 times between Rafah and Cairo?
Yep.
7 times?
Stopped 7 times. Stopped, and they want passports in the windows. They even made some rude comments to the Italian woman that was with us, let alone the Palestinian woman.
Yeah.
I heard I didn't get hit by fortunately, but a friend coming into Gaza, he had to pay a couple of bribes to the checkpoint soldiers to get through the checkpoint. It's really turning into the Wild West in Egypt. If you got a gun, then you call the shots. We're even stopped by, I don't know who it was, but we were stopped by civilians. I don't know if they were barrack thugs or Secret Service, but a couple of fellas with handguns in their waistbands. They had a checkpoint set up just on the other side of the Suez Canal. And they were checking each car on what authority they had or who they were, but
it's the Wild West, and who rules by the gun will be killed by the gun also. So, I mean, this is the rule, and if they don't respect human rights, that's what they really should expect, a revolt in Egypt against and an armed revolt against them, but hopefully it'll be popular like the Tahrir Square revolt. But I wanna emphasize the role of the Egyptian generals, because when they arrested John and Tarek, who were going to Shifa Hospital in Gaza to do support work there. They were arrested for 7 weeks almost, and they knew that they were going there, and obviously they sending a message to the solidarity activists that's what's going to happen to you if you go in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And this is proven because they released them yesterday, that they don't have any charges against them. They didn't really do harm to the so-called security of Egypt. All they did, Tarek treated some people, as a doctor, he treated some people who were really murdered or injured by the junta, by the military, and John took some pictures basically of what's happening, and that was their time.
They should be welcomed as heroes, is what they should be doing. But I think you've hit a good point there, that the Egyptians they're sending a signal to any activist who wants to get into Gaza, or any activist who wants to get into Egypt. And I think there's also a dual message here. The fact that the Canadian government did next to nothing to get them out of prison.
That's true.
I'm quite sure that the Canadian government was quite happy to leave them in prison and send a message to every single Canadian activist who wants to go into Gaza or into Egypt or to the Middle East, and send them a signal. If you go there, you're going there by yourselves, and you will not have Canadian government support.
They have the same agenda like the Egyptian military, that is to protect Israeli interests, and to protect Israeli interests, they shouldn't allow any activists. But one of the charges they said they're gonna wave against John and Tarek is really, I laughed, when they said it. They called them foreign mercenaries. And, for a junta that's really mercenary for the West and for Israel, and they get $2 billion a year from the Americans only, to call, these honest people who are really spending their time and money, the same like you. I mean, you're not paid to do this solidarity work. You are doing it on your account and your time and your money. The same with John and Tarek. To call them mercenaries, it's it's really mind-boggling, and and it comes from who? For some mercenaries themselves, who are agents of foreign powers. So what do you think? I mean,
well, again, it comes down to who's got the power. The Egyptians then the Israelis and the Americans, they'll say whatever they want to say because they've got the power to do it, and they'll it is mind-numbing how they presented John, and like I say, here they really should have been welcomed home and brought immediately home from Egypt as heroes. Here they. And to step in and try and save other lives, and John was trying to document it for evidence and
human rights violations. By doing that too, by putting them in jail for 7 weeks, is really stopped them from going to Gaza too. I mean, this time they were allotting to do solidarity work in Gaza, and now they can't do it because they have to go back to their jobs and to their lives here in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
he was going in to train emergency room doctors, and John was going to there's a whole opportunity that's gone, and maybe Tarek will never try again. I wouldn't blame him for not trying to go through Egypt again. I myself will question.
Yeah, although there is no other way because you can't go through the Eretz crossing either because they don't allow anybody to cross the Eretz. So it's basically Gaza is sealed now, and it's really a big prison.
Yep, and it's I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to take some real strength of character for the people of Gaza to hang on through this without lashing out, and they could be firing rockets just out of frustration and anger, and the Israelis are waiting for it. If rockets start to fly, they'll respond with rockets, and what the Western media will say. They'll say, "Oh, look at why are the Palestinians angry? Why are they firing rockets?"
And why they hate us. According to George Bush, why they hate us. That calls for intensifying really the solidarity work here in the West and specifically in Canada. Do you have an idea what people can do now? I mean, it's clear the people can go there as eyewitness because of the siege, or is there possibilities? Any possibilities of people going, according to what you know?
Well, like I say, an activist for the Gaza Arc, he got in just after me. He got through the border again. So some people are getting in, but he had to wait many weeks in Cairo for his papers to be processed.
And getting processed.
No,
so it's good. At least there is some hope. And I'm sure there is lots of sympathetic people in the Egyptian army because they are the sons and daughters of the people of Egypt. And the history of the Egyptian people in opposing the Zionist project, the colonialist project in Palestine, is really long and honorable. So, I just want to give you a last chance to final word to our listeners, Kevin, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. But if you can address what people can do really in addition to what we said, they could go and try to bear witness to Gaza and even to the West Bank, because the West Bank is not as in a bad situation as Gaza, but they still people there need eyewitness. We see that the BDS movement is gaining grounds, and other support solidarity work is really intensifying. So what do you suggest to our listeners to do?
Well, over and over again, I heard from Palestinians. They say, "What's happened to your government?" Mm-hmm. They knew they're very tuned into what was happening with the Canadian government and the lack of support and what Harper's doing, best friend of Israel and whatnot. And over again, I'd say, "Well, I'm from Canada," and the first thing they would say was, "What happened to your government? What's going on? So I think the first step is to get our own government straightened out, to approach our MPs and to get force Harper to either change his policies or get a new government in, one or the other. I can't imagine changing Harper's opinion on anything. But the Palestinians were very tuned in to what was happening internationally, and they were flabbergasted by what our government's been doing. John Baird's speech to the UN and whatnot. They were laughing about it. It was so comical to them. It was crazy, but
it could have been written by Netanyahu himself.
It might have been. It might have been.
That's good that people are aware of what's happening here, because that's half the battle. Awareness and consciousness is half the battle, really.
Yeah. No, it's they're in fact, I had a taxi driver who wouldn't take my money when he knew I was from Canada. It was I was thunderstruck. Usually Canadians are welcome anywhere in the world, but this taxi driver, when he heard I was from Canada, I stuck my money out to pay him, and he wouldn't take my money. Another activist from another country had to pay for me. He was that upset with Canada and Canadians, and it's not just the Canadian government. It's Canadians. It's Canada, the whole country.
They represent.
We're all to blame for this.
Yeah, that's true, and that's important point, because people don't see this is the Canadian position. They don't say this is the Canadian government position, which is they should differentiate. But that's in general the situation. The same with any other country. If the government takes a position, then the people should be responsible for it. And I think the Egyptian people are bearing the brunt now of the policy, the anti-Palestinian policy of the junta, and I think they are aware of it, and they're not going to tolerate it anymore. And we hope
hopefully.
Not for long either. Okay, thank you, Kevin, and it was a pleasure talking to you again, and keep up the good work, and we hope to see you soon in Vancouver.
Okay, well, thank you, Hannah. You take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Hannah Kawas doing a two-part interview with Kevin Neish. And with that, we conclude another edition of The Voice of Palestine. I've been your co-host, Marian Kawas, and our final piece of music is the lyrics by Egyptian poet Ahmed Fouad Njem, sung by the late legendary Sheik Imam. It's entitled, I Went to Allah Prison, a notorious Egyptian prison where both of these famous artists were incarcerated. We dedicate this piece of music to John Greyson and Tarek Loubani, recently released from an Egyptian jail, and to all those political prisoners still being held in both Egyptian and Israeli prisons.
منهم حتى الشوف بالعين وفي عز خليكوا فاكرين خليكوا